So last week I brought this story of the legendary 1836 Paris performance of the Hammerklavier Sonata by Beethoven under the hands of Franz Liszt. That performance must have been so incredibly impressive that Hector Berlioz, who was amongst the audience, wrote a review in the most admiring terms. For the first time, he wrote, "This gigantic work became clear under the hands of Franz Liszt." And moreover, Berlioz writes that he was reading along with the score in his hands, saying that Liszt didn't change anything and that he followed all the tempo indications as given by Beethoven. That's an important statement because there we learn that Franz Liszt was able to play the Hammerklavier Sonata perfectly in tempo, whereas today this is seen as quite impossible. This performance and that review partly has paved the way for Franz Liszt to be considered today as a pianist that is actually above human possibilities. Now, in last week's video you will also see this whiteboard, but then with all the parts of the Hammerklavier Sonata written out and calculated actually based on the Beethoven tempo indications, the metronome marks, the durations of each part of that sonata. We have made the calculation in whole beat. That's where the metronome actually gives the subdivisions of the note value in the metronome number, and in single beat. And later in the video I shared a letter from Franz Liszt written in 1876 in which he gave the duration of that Hammerklavier Sonata. In his mind the Hammerklavier Sonata lasts about 1 hour, which matches the whole beat performance. So partly we demystified, so to say, the facts of that 1836 performance, and Franz Liszt became a human being again after all. Which is a good thing, because it's much more interesting to research the work of human beings instead of kind of semi-gods. Now, that review by Berlioz, I was quoting an article written by Noortuin, which I again will link in the description box, and there are many things to say about this. Maarten Noortuin is one of the most important researchers today on tempo indications, and the great thing about him is that he is taking those metronome numbers seriously, rejecting the theories of the broken metronomes, the misused metronomes, and what have you. So a metronome number in his mind, as in my mind, is just a tempo indication, just quite accurately giving the opinion or the wish of the composer in which tempo that he would have wanted you to play his composition. So the only thing that actually separates Noortuin's works from mine is that he at the final point makes a decision not to look back into history and into the historical use of the metronome, where indeed the whole beat practice was so obviously present. So interestingly, the problem that these researchers have is at the end, music needs to be practically applicable. And we all know that these metronome numbers, at least a vast portion of it, causes really problems on a technical level. They are simply impossible to play. So it's always interesting to me to see how these scholars fix, so to say, the problem that's caused by pointing to an historical truth that seems not to be repeatable in our days. In this article, Noortuin points to a recording by Stephan Möller, and he writes as the following: "Whether Liszt adhered to the speed is hard to say with certainty, but a recent performance by Stephan Möller shows that the indicated speed is at least within the realm of possibilities even on a modern piano." So let's now compare to Stephan Möller's recording. What I've done is I've taken the duration of each movement of his version of the Hammerklavier Sonata, compared that to the calculated duration based on Beethoven's metronome marks, and then you can make an average in percentage what's the deviations from the original tempo indication. So for the first movement, Möller has 124 for the half note, Beethoven 138, that's 10% less. The scherzo is the closest with 93%, 74 compared to 80. The adagio, surprisingly as well, 74 eighth note, where Beethoven has 92 eighth note, so that's 81%, that's 19% below Beethoven's tempo indication. The largo, it's not so important, it's a short piece, is 66%. I wouldn't take too much conclusions from this because he has also added some kind of rubato stuff. So that's, in the whole, it's not so important, but that's the biggest difference, 66%. The fugue, quarter note 144, Möller has 120. That's 17% below Beethoven's tempo indication. Now, I know that some of you, and in general actually on an academic level, to explain these metronome numbers, people say, well, those metronome numbers, they count only for the first 4 bars. As if those composers gave you a metronome mark that you only would have to stick to 4 bars and then you could do whatever you want. What they meant is very simple. You have this line, let's say here's 138, and of course you're not playing along with the metronome. Your tempi goes, like Czerny clearly describes, a little bit like this. But these differences, of course, cannot be 20, 30, 40%, certainly not in an allegro movement. They are in a range of 5 to 10%. It's hard to say, it's up to you as a performer. But if those tempi go down too much, you clearly are outside the scope of this tempo indication, which is actually very easy and logic to understand. No serious performer takes a tempo indication and goes after 4 bars like this. It doesn't happen, and it makes no sense also. At the end, Möller's performance is 39 minutes and 45 seconds. So that's 17% lower than Beethoven. So there you have it. The fastest performance that we have today in 100 years of recording technology is still 70% off. It goes without saying that what Möller has done with this recording is astonishing on a technical level. I'm not criticizing him as a performer. It's really astonishing. The clarity he reaches in the fugue is really unseen for that tempo. Now, finally, this little sentence by Noorten, whether Liszt adhered to the speed is hard to say with certainty, but a recent performance by Stephan Möller shows that the indicated speed is at least within the realm of possibilities even on the modern piano. For me, that's a problematic sentence. I think when you research these things on a very high level, you should be always crystal clear in the way you formulate this. The way he formulated this sentence is clearly from a position that he feels a little bit uneasy with the fact that he is defending the single beat performance, but there is no musicians that can back him up for this. He's disconnecting, so to say, an historical truth that he claims to be true from a practical realization today. And so if you read that sentence from this background, it becomes clear that he has a big problem. Because he says, first, whether Liszt adhered to the speed is hard to say with certainty. You could say, well, that is true, but on the other hand, what would give you the reason to doubt Berlioz's judgment? He was reading with the score, he was a composer and a famous musician, so he could read the score, he also could, interpret the tempo indication, but I'll give him the credit. We actually don't know for sure. Then pointing to a performance by Stephan Möller shows that the indicated speed is at least within the realm of possibilities. So there he says, well, it's not really there, but it shows that the possibility is there. Only the wish for the musicians to go that fast is not there. That's what he's suggesting. But that's not completely true with 17% below. And you cannot say by this Stephan Möller that he has not the intentions of reaching the metronome numbers. His Beethoven recordings are partly based on the assumption and on the claim to his audience that he follows the Beethoven indications, which he doesn't. The last part of the sentence is the most problematic, even on the modern piano. Here Noorten suggests that on the Viennese piano, which I have 2 here, this performance easily could be raised in speed, which is absolutely not true. The only way for you as a musician or pianist to reach these tempi is on a modern piano, not on a Viennese piano. If only I take the scherzo, the repeated notes there. I will come back to the scherzo and share with you an interesting article written by Tom Begin. It's a Belgian player, forte-piano player, very known. He teaches in Canada. He made, I think, an article of 40 pages on the scherzo repeated notes, where he says, well, the 16th note repeats is impossible on the Viennese piano. It's simply impossible. His solution is a little bit awkward, and don't get me wrong, Tom Begin is a really strong single beat believer. His solution is a little bit weird, but actually he proves only for the scherzo that it's really impossible on a Viennese piano. You need the modern regulated double action mechanics to reach those tempi, and even then it's not possible. There you have it. The fastest performance on the planet is 17% on average below Beethoven's tempo indication. So Either Beethoven was crazy, or we massively are fooling ourselves. You all are smart enough to decide for yourself which of those two claims most likely is true. So that was it for today. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe to the channel, also hit the bell icon so you don't miss anything. And if you would like to support the things we're doing and become member of the inner circle of authentic sound, there's a link here to our Patreon page. Thank you for that. And for now, see you soon again.